everybody. Welcome. Happy Saturday. We have beautiful weather on my back porch and we have mowing across the valley. So hopefully that doesn't come through in the sound, but we'll see. We'll get started. Today we arrive at a familiar question. Okay, so what? Now what do we do? Hi, friends. Welcome to From the Threshold. I am Renee Hill, and each Saturday I come to you from my own back porch, my literal threshold, to offer a moment of reflection for anyone living a creative life. My hope is that this becomes a place where you can reconnect with your own creative story with a little more compassion and joy. Wherever you're listening from, I am so glad that you're here. Every transition eventually brings us here. After the grounding, the remembering, the releasing, and the listening that we've done, we're left wondering, how do we live this forward? And that's what this final phase is about. It's called return. And it is not about returning back to what once was. It's about gathering the threads of who you've become and beginning again from here. So here we are, the fifth and final phase of our journey, return. If you've been with me for this series, you know that we've been walking step by step through the process of navigating change well. We've learned how to root, remember, release, and reveal. And each one of those things has been primarily about noticing, tuning into what's happening inside of us when life shifts and identities unravel. Return, though, is different. Return asks, now that I've noticed all of these things, now what? How do I move forward? It's easy to think about return as stepping back, snapping back to how things used to be. But that's not really what happens in a transition. We can't go back to the old normal, not exactly. Something has ended or shifted or been released and something new is beginning. Return is about gathering what you've discovered in these last four phases and allowing it to shape the way that you live now. We don't need to rush to clarity or force a new role overnight. Instead, what we want to do is weave together these threads that you've uncovered, the grounding of root, the stories of remember, the release of old roles, and the quiet voice of reveal, and letting those form the beginnings of a new rhythm. Return is finding ways to get our arms around this new self that is emerging, that might be still a bit unsure, still a bit murky, still a bit unclear. It's a gathering in, a reclaiming of voice and agency, and a way of stepping forward, even if that way is still unfolding. About a month ago, as I was preparing this series, I found out that a large grant that I had applied for was not going to happen. The grant wasn't for Limina. It was for another project, but the news still landed like a fault line opening beneath me. I had built hopes and plans around it, and when it fell through, everything felt uncertain. Suddenly, what I thought the next year would look like, financially, schedule-wise, was no longer possible. It was transition in real time. And so I found myself walking through this very framework that we have been talking about together this month in real time, publicly. First came root. The disappointment was sharp, not just because of the project itself, but because that grant would have provided a year of financial stability as well. I had to let myself feel that ground wobble and then find ways to steady again. Small rituals, practices that kept me breathing and present, even when I didn't know what was coming next. Then came remember. I had to remind myself what still mattered. With or without the grant, what values were still guiding me, what vision still held true regardless of outside funding. And then release. I had to let go of the story that the grant was the only path forward, or that its loss meant that my work was not worth pursuing. I had to release the picture that I had been holding, and with it, the illusion of certainty. So when I reached reveal, the last step that we covered last week, I almost skipped right past it. Life was busy. It happened to be college move-in week for my son. It would have been really easy to skip listening for the quieter voice underneath the noise. That would have been a mistake, and I'm glad I didn't. I made an effort earlier this week to pause, to give space to what was surfacing, and it was more than what I expected. I had a significant moment of clarity, not about something brand new, but about something that I've been sort of circling around for a long time. A much deeper recognition of what I'm really doing with my work, what this means for me and for Limina, the kind of clarity that doesn't come from pushing, but from pausing long enough to listen. And that brings me to today, to return. My normal instinct is to respond to additional clarity with a plan, map it all out, structure it, get moving. That's because I'm a strategic thinker. It's just natural for me. And I've done a bit of that. I needed to sketch some training options and next steps, but what I really need more of right now is not a massive plan. What I need is a consistent practice of orienting myself in the right direction, a rhythm of return. And that's what I want to share with you today, because that's what this phase is all about. Return matters because transitions don't just disrupt our circumstances, they fragment us. They scatter our attention and our energy and our identity. We feel unmoored, disconnected from who we've been. And the first four phases are about slowing down long enough to notice what's happening inside that disorientation. But if we only ever notice, we risk staying stuck in reflection without moving towards integration. Return is where the noticing becomes living again. Psychologists tell us that habits and rhythms are what anchor our identity, and that's why rituals matter so much. They stabilize us when we're becoming someone new. But without some form of return, we drift endlessly in transition, always reflecting, never reorienting. It's not just psychology either. Creativity, too, has, in this, creatively, this phase matters. Creativity has always been a practice of beginning again. Every time we pick up a brush, a pen, a thread, we are saying, I am still here, and let's work through this empty canvas or page in front of me and see what it becomes. That active return, that willingness to start over, try again, is how we grow into the new self that's waiting on the other side of change. Return is also where agency is restored. In the early phases of transition, so much feels out of our control. We are carried by loss, by endings, by uncertainty. But in return, we get to choose again. We get to say, this is what I want, this is what I will not carry any longer, and this is what I will begin. That's why this phase matters so much, because it's not about having all of the answers, being clear. It's about taking one small step into the life that is unfolding now. So how do we do that? How do we practice return in a way that feels real and sustainable? I found that it does not take a complicated plan or a long to-do list. What it takes is consistently giving shape to desire, to boundaries, and agency. One simple way to do that is by finishing these 3 sentences. I want to, that's desire. I will release, that's boundaries. And I will begin, that's agency. That's it. 3 short sentences. I want to names your longing, puts words to the direction that you feel drawn towards, even if you can't see the whole picture yet. I will release reminds you that not everything belongs in this next season. Some things you've already let go, some things you're still in the process of letting go. And saying it plainly gives you permission and reminds you that you can stop carrying what no longer serves you. I will begin names one small act of agency that you can practice next. Not a giant plan, not a 5-year vision, just a step that you can take now that makes the next step possible. This is not a one-time practice either. It is meant to be a ritual that you repeat regularly, like weekly, so that each time is movement forward, but not an overwhelming restructure of your life. For example, this is how you might answer these sentences, or how I might answer these sentences. Actually, this is legitimately for me. I want to pursue a more serious arts practice. I will release the pressure to do everything quickly. And I will begin by finishing the 2 quilts that I have in my head that I cannot get out of there. Or another week, it might sound like this: I want to reduce my sense of living constantly in a rush. I will release the voice that says that it does not count if it is not productive. And I will begin stitching for no reason other than joy. 3 sentences written once a week. Over time, it becomes a rhythm of returning, naming desire, setting boundaries, and taking small steps forward. As you move into this week, I would encourage you to try this practice. Just 3 sentences, write them in your journal, in your notes app, on a scrap of paper tucked in your wallet, somewhere that you will see on a regular basis. Let them guide you not as rules, but kind of as an anchor for your week. So return is also a natural time for synthesis. After walking through root and remember and release and reveal, you might find yourself wanting to gather those threads and put them together and see what they form. There's no one right way to do this. For some, it might be something traditional like a goals and planning session, sketching out what the next season will look like. For others, it could take a more creative or symbolic form. I'm going to give you 5 possibilities. First, a review session, jotting down what you've learned, what you've released, and what you're beginning. Second, a creative project, making something, a collage, a quilt, a journal spread, if you're an art journaler, or something that represents who you are in this moment. Third, a ritual of return, lighting a candle, writing a short declaration, or marking this transition with some kind of symbolic act that reflects who you are today and is meaningful to you. 4, a reflection page, gathering one image, one word, and one sentence from each phase that we went through onto a single page. And 5, a rhythm plan, sketching a simple weekly or daily rhythm that helps you carry forward what matters. That 3-sentence ritual, that is what one of these things. That's how this could look. It's a rhythm plan. These are all ways of giving yourself something to help you hold the threads of your transition together and give it form and substance. Because the truth is that who am I now is not a question that we answer once. It's one that we live into week by week, step by step. And every act of return, every sentence, every ritual is part of how we carry our becoming forward. So before we close, I want to leave you with a few questions. You don't need to answer them all right now. Let them linger. Let them become companions for your week as you think about this return phase. So the first question is, how might I create a rhythm of filling out these 3 sentences? I want to, I will release, and I will begin. Would it help to do it on Sunday evenings or at the start of the work week, or maybe once a month on the first of the month? Second question is, what kind of integration practice feels meaningful to me right now? Do I need structure, like a planning session, or creativity, like a collage, dance, or painting? Maybe it's something simple and symbolic. Third question, where do I sense myself already returning? What small step or rhythm has begun to take root in me, even without trying? And 4, finally, what do I want to protect as I move forward? Which insights or new way of being do I need to guard so that they don't get lost in the noise of daily life? Take whichever of these questions speaks to you most and let it guide your practice of returning this week. So return is not the end of the journey. It is a first step into living forward, taking what you've gathered and letting it shape who you're becoming as the transitions, as you become more comfortable in that transitional space. Over these weeks, we've asked together, who am I now? And while that's not a question that we ever answer once and for all, You now have the tools to keep walking it out, to root, remember, release, reveal, and return as many times as life asks you to. And as we move into a new month, we're going to be exploring the next layer, which is voice. Because once we've found our footing again in transition, the next invitation is often to give shape and sound to what has become uncovered. So that's where we're going next together. If your voice has ever felt silenced or diminished, if you've ever wondered whether what you have to say really matters, this next series is for you. But for now, take with you this practice of return, small steps, 3 sentences at a time, becoming the rhythm of a new season. And of course, I will be right here again next Saturday on the threshold. If you would like to come on back, I would love to have you. Until then, stay passionately curious.